This is Nathan Fantasy Football League Updates. Today, we introduce the number one team in the Nathan Fantasy Football League preseason polls. We'll meet the top team, the defending champs, and how they can go back-to-back this year. All that and more next. Nathan Fantasy Football League Updates. Welcome to the final edition of our preseason polls. We have reached the number one spot. That is right. We have ranked every team in the 10-man, 2-quarterback, punter, PPR league. 6 teams out of those 10 will make the playoffs. And as always, don't forget to go and check out those videos just in case you haven't seen them already, just so you know how we got to number one. And let me know in the comments down below after you hear this video. Do you agree with my take? Do you think this team should be number one, or should they be a little bit lower? And let me know in the comments below. Who are you supporting this season? Who's your squad? Let me know in the comments down below. So let's waste no more time. We've ranked all 10 teams now. Let's get you the order. So clocking in at number 10, the Rocky River Rough Riders. Number 9, the Bay City Bunnies. Number 8, the Grand Rapids Groundhogs. Number 7, the Zestmeisters. Number 6, the Guantanamo Bay Flying Squirrels. Number 5, the Iguanas. Number 4, the Bowling Green Cave Shrimp. Number 3, the Empire Strikes Back. Number 2, the Brisbane Bay Bandicoots, who we just revealed yesterday. And today, let's get you the reigning champs, the defending champs, the number one preseason team, the Michigan Avengers. That is right. The Michigan Avengers will be our number one team in the preseason poll. So let's meet them. And this is a very well-rounded team. I felt like this team covered everything well. And their main thing this season, obviously, you're the defending 2023 champs. You've got the best winning percentage in the league the last 3 seasons. They've made the playoffs all 3 years. They haven't really had a ton of success their first 2 years, but then last year they break the code, they go to the championship, and they get things done. So now they're looking for the repeat, and they started out on a great note, going out and getting a lot of fantastic players. They made a couple trades on trade day. They moved up in the second round, moved out of the third round, but all the moves kind of added up well for the Avengers, and they are looking to make a good run. They really covered all the holes, and they got a lot of players who were falling in the draft, which honestly they got great value on. So let's meet this team right now, and we begin at the quarterback position for the Avengers, and they went out and got Patrick Mahomes. That's right. Patrick Mahomes, the cannon of an arm. Patrick Mahomes, an incredible quarterback, and we know he's going to have plenty of success. He's got plenty more weapons this year as Patrick Mahomes looks to go for the three-peat. The Michigan Avengers will hope he can bring them along the way to a repeat. So that'll be fun to watch, but took Patrick Mahomes in the second round to cover the quarterback position. Love the pick. Nothing really to complain about with Patrick Mahomes. You move on and you back him up with Justin Herbert, who, you know, a couple of years ago, we'd be like, whoa, this is a top quarterback duo. But Justin Herbert, obviously a little banged up already. So is he going to be ready for week 1? We sure hope so. If not, who knows? Maybe we see Max Duggan roll out for the Chargers. But nonetheless, Justin Herbert is, you know, a little banged up, but still, he's got a new head coach in the building in Harbaugh, who we all know is going to want to run the rock. We know the receiving options in LA aren't phenomenal by any means. So Herbert, it's going to be a luxury to throw the football. So I think it's a good spot for your quarterback too, because obviously it's still Justin Herbert. We know he's a great player, but this year, is he going to have the same fantasy production we're used to when they're going to probably be in a run-heavy offense? So Little bit of question marks with Justin Herbert, but overall, I don't mind it because it's still Justin Herbert. And obviously, when he slings the rock, he's pretty good at it. So, your quarterback duo, probably one of the top 5 in the league, which is already solid enough. But then your running back position really helps you as well. And at pick 9, you got somebody who is drastically falling. This was kind of the theme for the Avengers, is falling players. They really turned into awesome picks. And they went out and got Breece Hall at pick 9 in the draft. Breece Hall fell drastically. Nobody wanted him. Everybody was more concerned with the receivers and technically CMC and Bijan Robinson. Breece Hall fell drastically. I thought he'd be available at 10, but at pick 9, the Michigan Avengers go Breece Hall, and I don't mind the pick. Obviously, a guy who was a top 5 projected pick, and you got him at pick 9. The falling value was there. Breece Hall is no competition in New York. He's going to be the bell cow running the football. And obviously, Aaron Rodgers coming off an injury. I think the Jets, the first couple of weeks, are definitely going to rely a little bit more on the run game to go easy on Rodgers to begin things because they want him more than 4 snaps. And Breece Hall is excellent out of the backfield, and the Jets love to run some little screens and options to him. So, Breece Hall, I like the pick. Obviously, I didn't like him as a top 5 value, but at pick 9, I'm perfectly fine with the pick. And I think it's an awesome running back one to have. I know he had a great stretch of games at the end of the season, and now he looks to repeat that starting this season and carrying on. He called his shot. He says he's going to be a Pro Bowler. He's going to lead the league in rushing. We'll see if that comes true. If it does, this is a problem, especially for the Michigan Avengers. So, now we move on to Jahmyr Gibbs at your running back 2 position. Love the pick. Obviously, you went back-to-back running backs, though, which doesn't make me feel super confident. I usually like the running back wide receiver duo, but still, you get 2 good running backs. Obviously, Jahmyr Gibbs, I thought he was a little overvalued in the second round because, once again, he splits touches with David Montgomery. David Montgomery's going to take more of the touchdown share, but Jahmyr Gibbs is more of a receiving back and will get more of the workload in the middle of the field. But nonetheless, I like Jahmyr Gibbs as a fantasy player. I think he'll have his ups and downs, but the big news out of Lions camp is a hamstring injury for Jahmyr Gibbs. Hamstring injuries are costly to running backs, so we'll see. Is Jahmyr Gibbs going to be ready for week 1? Is this going to be a problem? We'll find out because the running back depth is not great for the Michigan Avengers, but we'll find out shortly. But Jahmyr Gibbs as a player overall, I like the pick. He'll have his ups and his downs, but we'll have to see if he's the same Jahmyr Gibbs after a early season hamstring injury. So we move on to your wide receivers, and this is technically the weak point, but still I think you got plenty of solid wide receiving. You went out and got at wide receiver 1, your first wide receiver off the board, Mike Evans. Love Mike Evans. We know he's a great red zone threat for the Buccaneers. He's always due what seems for a 40-point game at least once a season. But Mike Evans, a phenomenal pick. Obviously, there are better options as wide receiver 1, but Mike Evans is a solid pick that is going to be consistent all season long. He's had a full season with Baker Mayfield now. And I think towards the end of the season, Baker Mayfield kind of figured out, got to go to Mike Evans. This is a guy who's easily going to get you 14 to 15 to 16 points a week. Obviously, there'll be a couple dud weeks in there, but still, Mike Evans, a solid number 1 option. And you back him up with a player I see very similarly to Mike Evans. It's DK Metcalf. Both of them are just very solid guys that their teams get them the rock. Obviously, DK Metcalf in a new offensive system. So we'll see if that works in his favor. Obviously, it's a little bit more crowded over in Seattle with Tyler Lockett and Jackson Smith and Jigba. But I still think DK Metcalf is the number 1 option there in Seattle. And they're going to get him the football. And obviously, just like Mike Evans, he's always due what seems for like a 35-plus point week at some point in the fantasy season. So you'll have your ups and downs with both these receivers. But overall, I like both of them to kind of, anchor down the wide receiver room. And you anchor down the tight end, which I feel like is a tight end that you get what seems to be every year. This is becoming a staple player, and this is probably one of the better staple players compared to Michael Dixon and Younghoe Koo. But it's Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews, obviously, the tight end for the Baltimore Ravens, is excellent when healthy. Him and Lamar have such a good connection, and he is such a huge red zone threat for Baltimore. Obviously, I've heard some speculation Isaiah Likely is going to take some of his time on the field, but we will see. Mark Andrews, of course, coming off an injury that could slow him down. Obviously, he's getting up there in age, and the big fella, has some injuries, and that could really make him regress as a valuable fantasy option. Obviously, a couple more receiving threats in the building, but we also know Baltimore wants to run the ball. But still, I think Mark Andrews is technically the number one receiving option. I know they have some other guys in the building that are just, you got to get them the football, but I still think Mark Andrews will be the guy for Lamar Jackson when they want to throw the football. So, love the tight end pick. Then we look at your flex position, and you wanted to continue to kind of back up your wide receiving room, and I think, it worked out well. You went out at your flex and got Jalen Waddle. You take a flyer on Waddle, obviously, who has to compete week in and week out with Tyreek Hill, but the Dolphins have really improved on being able to get both of them the football, and both of them produce pretty solid fantasy point weeks. It's not like one guy will have the exceptional week, the other one sucks. It's like, all right, one guy may have a better week, but the other one will still be consistent. And so I like Jalen Waddle at the flex, and obviously Tyreek goes down, Jalen Waddle is the guy. So I like the option at the flex position. I think Jalen Waddle is a solid player that will have his ups and downs, but overall will be a consistent scorer, and that's what you need at the flex position. Now we look at the special teams and defensive unit. You went out and gotten one of the top three defenses. You went out and got the Cowboys defense. That's right, the Cowboys defense, obviously we know. Pick Six City, we'll see if that comes back this year. If Bland is still able to get a ridiculous amount of pick sixes. The defense for the Cowboys forces a lot of turnovers. They're exceptional at doing that. I don't think you have to go to waivers much at all. And they play in a division where you get the Giants and Commanders twice a season. So Cowboys defense, exceptional. Looking at another Cowboy at your kicking position, you got Brandon Aubrey, who was arguably the best kicker last year in fantasy football. The Cowboys are known for either stalling out drives, which result in long 3 kicks, or the extra points from scoring a touchdown. Brandon Aubrey is a safe, sound kicker. And you back up the punting position with Bryce Behringer, the punter for the New England Patriots. We all know the Patriots offense is terrible. We all know they're going to punt a ton. So this is a great pick. So now moving on to the bench, and I think obviously not a top 2 bench in the league, but it's flirting with that 3 position and a definitely top 5 bench. You really covered a lot of things well. And my only knock is really the running back position. You really didn't cover your running back 3 position well, which could come back and hurt you, but we'll get to that in a minute. Leading off the top of your bench, it's Chris Godwin. So you get both wide receivers for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And obviously Godwin is just a consistent 10 to 13 to 14 point guy. Occasionally he'll get that 18 to 19 week. Obviously it feels like he's kind of regressed, and Mike Evans has been really the offense for fantasy value in Tampa Bay. But Chris Godwin is still a solid option that you can plug and play at that flex, or if Mike Evans goes down, Chris Godwin becomes that wide receiver 1 in Tampa Bay. So I love the pick of Chris Godwin because he's just a staple of consistency. He's going to get you the middle of the row points. That is perfect for like a flex guy. Now we move down your bench and you go with another guy that kind of got hurt a little bit. It's Marquise Brown, who might miss some time for the Chiefs. Obviously, he's in a new place, no longer in Arizona with Kyler Murray. He's now with Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City, and Marquise Brown is set to be the number 1 wide receiving option. Obviously, Travis Kelce's there, Xavier Worthy's there, Rashee Rice is there. So we don't know how that wide receiving room is going to play out. We know when Juju Smith-Schuster went to Kansas City, we all thought, wow, he's going to have an incredible fantasy season, and he didn't because they share the rock so well. Maybe Marquise Brown will be different, and he'll be the guy and get a ton of fantasy value every week, but still, nonetheless, this is a guy that when he gets healthy, obviously he's buried at your wide receiver 5, but he could have some great fantasy football games as long as Patrick Mahomes gives him the rock and not everybody else now in that offense. Then you go with, in my opinion, a risky pick, but nonetheless, once again, you back up your quarterback with one of his receiving options. You go Ladd McConkey from the Chargers. So Ladd McConkey, obviously one of those wide receivers out of Georgia, and I've already heard he's competing for that wide receiving 1 spot in LA. That's how good Ladd McConkey has been in the preseason and training camp. So Ladd McConkey, like I said, wide receiver 6, but good value. Like I said, Justin Herbert's throwing him the football. There's 6 points for Herbert and a lot more for Ladd McConkey. So obviously some great value there, especially the same thing with Marquise Brown. You get the value of touchdown passes, but it's how can Ladd McConkey play against some top corners in the league, or will he be locked down? Obviously, like I talked about with the Chargers, they're going to want to run the football. So Ladd McConkey, we'll see. Zach Charbonnet then rounds the running back room for your bench. He is the running back 3 and the running back 2 on his current team. He sits behind Kenneth Walker on the Seattle Seahawks, and we know last year there was talk about him taking reps away. He didn't really take a ton of reps away from Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker is still the bell cow in Seattle, so unless the offense drastically changes to where they need 2 running backs, Zach Charbonnet is a poor running back 3. That is the one knock I have with this team, is you didn't cover running back 3 position well, and Jahmyr Gibbs is already a little bit banged up, so if he can't go week 1, you got to start Charbonnet, and not a good look. Zach Charbonnet, though, not a terrible back, but obviously if Kenneth Walker goes down, that's when you can play him. But at this current point, Kenneth Walker's healthy, so not a great running back 3 option. That's my big knock on Zach Charbonnet. Then we get your quarterback 3, which is a fine option. You go out and get Derek Carr. Derek Carr is going to get you 10 to 15 points a week consistently. He'll throw some interceptions. He'll have some solid games, but more often than not, it's just a middle-of-the-road quarterback, and I'm sure you're just going to start him when you have to start him, when Patrick Mahomes or Herbert is on a bye week, or if Herbert's injured. Obviously, Derek Carr, just a middle-of-the-row option. Not much to say. He's got some weapons in Chris Olave and Alvin Kamara. Not the greatest team over there in New Orleans, so Derek Carr, just a middle-of-the-road quarterback. Not much to say. Then we get to your final 2 bench players. The first one is the number 1 receiver for the Carolina Panthers. I really like this pick. You went out and got Deontay Johnson. Deontay Johnson, of course, traded from the Pittsburgh Steelers to the Carolina Panthers to become that option and safety net for Bryce Young, who is still developing. I love the pick because obviously I think Bryce Young, we saw what he did with Adam Thielen. I think he's going to become a little bit more familiar and comfortable with Deontay Johnson as the season progresses. And Deontay Johnson could become a very reliable fantasy football option for you down the stretch of the season once those two really start to gel. So love the pick of Deontay Johnson. And then your final pick is Ty Chandler. You go back to the running back position, but once again, a backup in the Minnesota Vikings backup running back. Obviously, last season, he kind of took over the running back 1 position, but now Alexander Madison's gone and Aaron Jones is in the building. Obviously, Aaron Jones is more of a receiving and then first and second down guy. Maybe Ty Chandler becomes that third down running back, but I still think Aaron Jones will get a majority of the snaps. Ty Chandler, unless Aaron Jones goes down, is very unreliable at the running back position. So you're really, with your running backs, looking for injuries to help you out. But nonetheless, that is the number 1 team, the Michigan Avengers. They've got a really solid roster. I like the bench outside of the running back depth, and we'll see how that comes into play later on. But overall, let's get those predictions for this squad. It's really good. Obviously, they play in the AFC, so they've got the likes of the Cave Shrimp, and then as well as the Bunnies, the Groundhogs, and the Zest Meisters. So a pretty solid division for the Avengers to probably take over and run the AFC. I'm looking for them to probably win the division and take that 1 seed into the playoffs for that first round bye. And let's change pace, though, and say, what's the floor looking like? And right away, the running back position, we've kind of already harped on it. Jahmyr Gibbs, not the healthiest, or doesn't play up to par because of this hamstring injury. DK Metcalf and Mike Evans are really shaky. Mark Andrews is not his true self after the injury. Jalen Waddle just can't get targets. And then Herbert or Mahomes deals with injury. And then obviously the running back position doesn't pan out well. Wide receivers don't really pan out. The floor for this squad, it's a 6-8 season, or a 6-8 floor for the Avengers. This is a well-managed team. Like I said, they've got the best winning percentage, and I think they play in a weaker AFC, and because of that, they're well-managed. They'll get their lineups out in the right spot that they need to be, and they'll win some close ones. I think that's their floor, though. 6-8 if things were to go wrong, their first playoff miss. Then we flip sides to the ceiling, and this is an incredible team. It's my number 1 team for a reason, and similar to the Bandicoots, this team 12-2 if things go right, which I think they very well could. You've got a great defense and you've got great position players all the way through. And, some of these wide receivers off the bench break out. You can take those risks if you've got so many. This could be a 12-2 scary good team down the stretch. And obviously, you can make some trades with this wide receiver depth. If guys are out there looking for wide receivers, you're able to be like, hey, I've got Deontay Johnson, who's become more of a valuable asset. Give me back a valuable running back 3 or a running back 2 in that matter. So, some good options here for the Avengers, but let's get my final prediction. What do I think they will actually finish as? I think they'll finish as the best record in the league at 10-4. I think this is a team that is going to dominate week in and week out. Like I said, they've got an easier division, and I think they've got their right weeks. I think they'll do really well against some of the lower level teams on this preseason poll, and they'll just be on cruise control most of the season as long as they stay healthy and they can really figure out that running back position. Obviously, I'm sure they might make a waiver wire move that could get them a better running back 3, but obviously, this is a team that is well coached, good winning percentage. They'll make it back to the playoffs. They'll go as the 1 seed, and they will look to repeat this year. I think there's some solid teams that could definitely look to put them up on upset alert, but overall, this is the defending champs. I think they built another good team this year that rivals that of last year's, and watch out, because here come the Avengers looking to repeat. Can anybody stop them? We will find out. So that is the preseason poll. We've got you 1 through 10. Hope you guys enjoyed, and the next video out, which will be in a couple weeks, will be the first week of predictions. I'm going to predict every matchup, tell you who their top scorer is going to be, who's going to be the best scorer of the week, who I would start, who I wouldn't start. All that and more will be the next episode a little later on, closer to the first week of NFL season here on the Nathan Fantasy Football League Updates Network.